Hello and welcome to Atheist Torah Study. My name is Emma Lugo and I am exploring the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, in a year-long course of study. And I'm looking at it from the lens of an atheist. A Parsha is a portion of the Torah, and it's in the Jewish context, which I'm familiar with. There are 54 parshas in the Torah, and each one is scheduled for a week. So you read it for a week, and then you go on to the next parsha. And so by doing that, they get through the entire Torah every year. And then parshas are actually broken up into thirds. So every year you read a third of a parsha. And so that's what we're doing. I'm doing a year-long exploration of the Torah from the perspective of an atheist. And right now we're in Parsha Vayeshev, which is Genesis chapter 37. And the reason I'm doing this is because the reason I'm doing it is because religion has been around a while, and regardless of whether we believe it or don't believe it, it's still something that shapes the world around us. And I, as somebody who was kind of brainwashed by being indoctrinated in religion at a young age, I have a religious brain. And so for me, it was a really big deal to come out of religion and to realize that I was an atheist, which I did when I was about 18. I came out as an atheist when I was about 18 or 19. And but I've maintained a relationship with religion my entire adult life, even to this point in my life. I'm 55 years old now. And I still study religion. I still find it really interesting. And I maintain a connection with it because even though I'm not religious, quote unquote, I recognize that religion basically shaped my core identity at a time when I didn't really have any say over it. And so I think the best thing to do for somebody like me who's been indoctrinated in religion and sees the world through a religious lens, I think the best thing for me to do with that baggage is to kind of look at it with an atheist lens and really get into it. Because, I mean, I understand what it means both in the language of religion and faithfulness and also in the language of atheism. And so I'm doing this because I want to kind of have a conversation between the two parts of myself and also between these two Western intellectual traditions, because they're both important. They're both very important. I mean, maybe it would have been better if there had never been any religion, but we can't really undo it. Now we live in a world where there's like, I don't know what, there's like 1.6 billion Christians and 2.3 billion Muslims, and there's only 12 million Jews, so there's not a lot of Jews. And then I guess there's Buddhists. I don't know. I mean, there's some places that are quote unquote atheist, like China's atheist, although I think they still practice something. Well, I don't know. Maybe China's all atheist. But a significant part of the world, and Africa's a bunch of different things, So, but in terms of these global religions, of course, Hinduism. So, religion's here, and it's an important part of human culture. So, I figure I might as well have a conversation between these two parts of the world. So anyways, we're going to get into this tonight. This is Parsha Vayeshev, which is it's in the middle of the story of Joseph. So it's at the end of the Torah. It's at the end of the book of Genesis. It's a really long section, and it basically follows the life of Joseph, and it kind of tells the story of Joseph. And so we're going to get into that. First, I'm going to do the blessing for Torah study, and then I'm going to just jump right into the text. So here's the blessing for Torah study. It's in Hebrew. I'm going to say some Hebrew now. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kichanu b'mitzvotah, b'tzivanu la'asok v'vorei Torah. And that means basically we're blessing the study of the Torah. So here goes. Vayeshev, Genesis chapter 37, verse 1. Now Jacob was settled in the land where his father had sojourned, the land of Canaan. In previous Torah studies, I've talked about Canaan, and I'll probably talk about it some more. Canaan is kind of the root culture of Judaism. So when you look at the Canaanite deities, there seems to be a line of succession between Canaan and what then became Judea. I mean, everybody in the Levant at that time was kind of mixing and mingling. So, you know, it's just like today. I mean, people moved around. But at least some of we can definitely say that at least some of the origin of Judaism, as it's understood today, came from Canaan, which is why it keeps on showing up in the Torah. Anyways, we'll keep on going. This then is the line of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Jacob tended the flocks with his brothers. Hold on, what am I reading here? It's the line of Jacob, Israel of Joseph. Below, Joseph had a dream. He said, hear them, I dreamed. Dreamed another dream. I thought we already did all this stuff. Oh, we're just starting the story of Joseph here. Okay, sorry. I'm a little bit out of sync here. I thought we were already at the end of the story of Joseph, and no, we're just starting the story of Joseph. So, right, okay, so last week was Jacob and Esau. So we hadn't really gotten into Joseph yet. So this is Joseph, right? The last 13 chapters or so of the Torah are Joseph. Okay, all right. Now I know where we are. Pardon me. But, okay, so we're at the beginning of the story of Joseph. So this is Joseph's life. And this is when he's really young. So right now, chapter 37, we're meeting Joseph, and he's a young man. He's 17 years old. And I don't know if you remember what it was like when you were 17. I remember what it was like when I was 17. Boy, 17 is a good age, isn't it? That was a good, I don't know. I guess it depends. 17 is a good age. I remember, oh my gosh, I remember how great it felt to be 17. That was a great feeling. I mean, it feels good to be 55 too, but 17 was really fun. And Jacob was 17, or Joseph was 17 here in the story. So Joseph, the story of Joseph, he's kind of like, he's known as a dreamer. So he's a dreamer, and and dreams are an important part of of his story. Dreams are important to all of these characters in the Torah. So Jacob has dreams. Who else has dreams in the Torah, in this part of the Torah? Well, Jacob definitely does. And so does Joseph. So I guess it's like father, like son. So they're going to start right away by talking about Joseph's dreams. And, I know a little bit about Jewish tradition. I mean, I've been studying studying Torah for about 10 years now. So I know a little Jewish tradition. But I may not know everything. I'm speaking from my own, and plus I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist the whole time I've been involved in Judaism, but that hasn't been a problem. So, so dreams. I mean, I've never been in any kind of Jewish space like where dreams have been treated as if they have actual theological meaning. Um, I mean, in the Torah, there's dreams, and I think that my understanding of dreams as they've been conveyed in the Torah and in my Jewish studies is that they could have significance or not. They're definitely something that people do, and they're given significance because people have dreams. So I mean, my understanding of Judaism and my understanding of God in Jewish tradition is that, I mean, it's like, first of all, the idea of God in Jewish tradition is that God is beyond anything that you can understand. So, which is convenient. I mean, as an atheist, this is, I get to critique this because, I'm in direct conversation with it. But it's like there's this idea that God is something that is like so significant, that so grand that you can never even understand what God is. So as an atheist, I mean, I think, wow, that makes it really easy to keep people from ever understanding anything about themselves or about the world or about the texts in the Torah. And because if you're constantly saying that this thing is so much greater than anything that you can ever know, then uh, then you can never know it, and so you can never really connect with it. So that's and it's like, unfortunately, right away, as soon as you start studying Torah or as soon as you read the Bible, you just bump right up against God. God is right there, the idea of God, and you have no idea what to do with it because it isn't anywhere. I mean, when I was much younger, I mean, I thought God was like some kind of a tangible thing. I thought God was like, I mean, kind of like they say when they pray. God is like this kind of knows your thoughts, and God like created the universe, and God's kind of in charge, but he's not. And people have this free will, and you can talk to God, just like that's what prayer was. It's like you're supposed to talk to God. And but it was never really clear, like, what is this God you're talking to? I mean, what is God is supposed to be in any sense? What is God supposed to be? And it's like when I was growing up, I mean, I thought God was your conscience, or like this voice in your head or something, or like God was like this thing that you communicated to, like you communicated to God, but God wasn't gonna say anything back to you. The idea was, well, if you were lucky enough, maybe you would hear God, like Moses heard God or something. But otherwise, you never heard God. So that was, Now I've talked to a lot of other people in religious traditions. I mean, I, like I said, I have a religious brain. And so, I love talking religion to anyone. I mean, I like talking to Muslims. I like talking to Buddhists. I like talking to atheists. I like talking to Wiccans. I like talking to pagans, Hindus, um, African religious practitioners, Native American religious spiritual practitioners, anyone who wants to talk religion, spirituality, theology, I'll talk to them because it's all really fascinating to me. And I also like talking dead religions too. Dead religions are really fun, but this God that you pray to. I mean, what exactly is it? Anyways, so there's this idea, this abstract God. This is the Jewish claim to fame, sort of. It's like this abstract God. It's like the Jews carried around the abstract God who wasn't anything, could never be represented. And then, the Christians really kind of messed that up. The Christians really messed it up because then the Christians said, "Oh well, here's what the Jews say, but let's just say God is a person. Let's say God is a man," which is a pagan idea. It's a pagan idea to say that God becomes a man. Well, it's not pagan. I shouldn't use that. It's actually just an old idea. It's the most normal thing in the world for people to want to imagine that their God is a person. That's seems to be something people do a lot, or that their God is an animal, or that their God is something animistic. So in most religions, their God like becomes something familiar. Like if I were practicing religion in my lifetime, my God would definitely be a cat. No doubt about it. I would have a cat for a god. So I guess I'd be like the Egyptians. Yeah, my God would definitely be a cat. No, absolutely no doubt about it. Anyways, well, let's keep on going. I'm just rambling. This then is the line of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended the flocks with his brother as a helper to the son of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. And Joseph brought bad reports of them to their father. So let me just say that again. So in the first line, Jacob settled in the land where his father had gone, the land of Canaan. So Jacob's in Canaan. Oops, sorry. Jacob's in Canaan, and then Joseph, his son, he has 12 sons by 4 wives who all know each other. This is like the Mormon thing, the Mormons are doing the biblical thing. I mean, because here's Jacob with 4 wives, and the Torah never says anything about that. I mean, later commentary in Jewish tradition eventually gets to a point where it kind of like decides that it's not going to really follow polygamy as a practice. Although it's my understanding that there are some places where polygamy still is practiced. And for me, as an open-minded person, I don't really see a problem in principle with polygamy. I mean, I don't practice polygamy myself, but I don't really have any problem with it. I've spent plenty of time around lots of Wiccans who love polygamy and lots of queers and anarchists who just kind of practice what do they call that? Relationship anarchy, where you know, and I mean, people sleep around. People sleep around with a lot of people, especially when they're of a particular age. So it's like, but I mean, here, this is the patriarchy. This is like the patriarchy. It's like, it's not one woman with 4 husbands. It's one man with 4 wives. I like it. I think one woman should have 4 husbands. That makes a lot more sense to me. Because if a woman has 4 husbands, it's like, I think it takes about 4 men to keep one woman happy. That's personally what I think. And that's not even like who even says a man can make a woman happy. But if a man could make a woman happy, I think it would take about 4 of them, personally. Although 4 men would also be enough to make you want to just become a lesbian and just be like, okay, I'm just done with it. So maybe this makes more sense. I don't know. Anyway, so Jacob has 4 wives. He has Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah. So I don't personally have any. I mean, as an atheist, I don't have any problem with having lots of partners. I mean, I think that if you look at nature, in nature, there's all kinds of examples of how people reproduce. Um, it's pretty common in the natural world for there to be like the female lives alone or with other females and will have sex with the male to reproduce and then go off on her own or go back to the company of other females. I mean, there's also examples of animals pair bonding, male and female, and hanging out together. And then of course there's lots of examples in the animal kingdom of queers. There's lots of queer animals. So there's all kinds of, I mean, the 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 animal world is full of lots of different examples of how people partner up with each other. And so, I mean, as an atheist, I don't think there's really any hard and fast principle for how people are supposed to reproduce. I mean, um, my understanding of the function of most organisms is survival and reproduction. And so, if you can reproduce by having four wives and they're all happy with it, then that's great. I mean, if you want to have four husbands and reproduce that way, that works too. If you want to live with your wife and just get some sperm from somebody, that's fine too. If you want to, however people want to reproduce is fine. There's not really any particular hard and fast rule about how to do it. I mean, I think that as human beings, I think that what we want to say is that you should be kind. I mean, I think you would hope that, like, no matter how people choose to reproduce and what kind of relationship that they have with that, the important thing is to be nice to each other and to be thoughtful and respectful. So I think, ideally that's I think what you would want is just some respect. Anyway, so let's see this then. So this was the line of Jacob at 17 years of age. Joseph, which is he's the second youngest, tended the flock. So he was a shepherd. He tended the flocks with his brother as a helper to the sons of his father's wife. So they don't say brothers, but they go through the mother to describe the relationship of Joseph to the other men that he worked with. So, most of them are like his quote unquote half brothers, although really they're all his brothers. Bilhah, and then it says Bilhah and Zilpah. We don't hear a lot. Bilhah and Zilpah don't get a lot of press in the Torah. Rachel and Leah get all the press. Bilhah and Zilpah don't get that much. And then Joseph brought bad reports of his brothers to his father. So, so what does that say? That was saying Joseph is, well, it didn't say what they were doing though. It said bad reports. But it didn't say what they did. So I don't know. I mean, was Joseph bringing bad reports of his brothers to his father that were true, or was he lying and trying to embellish what he saw to gain favor in his father's eyes? That's the kind of thing I would think of. Of course, none of this has anything to do with atheism. And none of this happened anyways. This isn't real. This is a made-up story. Now Israel, Jacob, loved Joseph best of all his sons. He was his child of old age, and he had made him an ornamented tunic. Okay, so we know this one. So it's a child of old age. So we all know about the youngest, and we know that there's this understanding that the youngest gets all the doting and is like the spoiled child. And I don't know if that's true or not. I have siblings. I'm not going to talk about my siblings on this show because that's personal, but I will talk about myself. I'm the oldest, and I understand what it feels like to be the oldest. When you're the oldest, you feel a lot of responsibility. You almost feel like a surrogate parent, especially if you have siblings that are much younger than you. So I understand what it feels like to be the oldest, but I don't really understand what it feels like to be the youngest. But from what I hear, being the youngest is like you kind of get treated as the really special child because you're one of the last ones. And so you get all the doting and since for most people the biggest joy that they have in life is reproducing. Um, what they could. I mean, if you ask most people at the end of their life or at any point in their life, like, what is the most significant thing you've ever done or what has the most meaning to you, they almost always say their family and their children. And so, and of their children, probably their youngest child, which is the last one, is the one that they feel the most precious about because that's the last one. And and then they can't wait for their grandchildren. So yeah, if you spread it out, if you're really smart, like if you're a good Jew or a good Catholic, and you spread them out, say you start having them when you're 18, and you keep on having them till you're like 45, then you could have a whole mess of them. And by the time the one that you had when you were 18 is an adult and having grandchildren, you're just raising up the last of yours that you had when you were like 40 or 45. So then you have this constant like parade of children in your life. So I'm sure that's a nice feeling. All I have is cats, so I'm like I'm an Orthodox Jewish cat lady. I have 7 cats, so we had a lot of cats in my family. That was kind of, we kind of overdid it because we didn't practice cat abstinence. We just kept on having cats. Anyways, I sound ridiculous, don't I? Okay. Um, when Joseph's brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of his brothers, they hated him so that they could not speak a friendly word to him. So Joseph's brothers really hated Joseph because his father liked him the most, this is sibling rivalry. The last Parsha Torah study, we talked all about sibling rivalry. And, I mean, my theory is that whoever did this, wrote out this part of the Torah, had some issues around sibling rivalry because they keep on coming up. It keeps on coming up. And it's like, he's probably a really, really wise person. He's probably really smart. And he just kind of decided that his own personal experiences of sibling rivalry, or maybe some understanding that he had of sibling rivalry, was like one of the sources of sin in the world, or one of the problems. And there's probably some truth to it. I mean, it's too bad that the people who wrote the Torah didn't realize that patriarchy was the biggest problem of all. I mean, it would have been nice if somebody who wrote the Torah had kind of figured that out. I mean, they figured out that sibling rivalry was an issue, but they didn't figure out the patriarchy was an issue, which is too bad. It's like we've had to live through 2,400 years of the Torah and 18 years of the Bible. And I'm not going to talk about Islam because I don't want to insult anyone who studies Islam. I'm not talking about Islam. But I can definitely talk about the Bible and about the Torah. We've had 2,400 years of the Torah, 1,800 years of the Bible. And, in that whole time, nobody who redacted it or rewrote it ever thought, oh, what about the women? What about women? Like, why is God a man? Why is everything in the Torah, in the Bible, about men? In the Christian one, why is the Son of God a man? Why wasn't it the daughter of God? Whatever. It's just, to me, that's the biggest problem with the Torah, is just with all this stuff. It's like they wrote the stuff, they figured out sibling rivalry as a thing, but they didn't figure out patriarchy as a thing. So that's that. Anyways, let's keep on going. Once Joseph had a dream, which he told his brothers, and they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream which I have dreamed. So here we are, we're getting into the dream. There were binding sheaves. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. That means they were cutting down the wheat crop and binding it up. And this is kind of cool because it tells you a little bit about how people lived back then. You know, this whole agriculture thing. Excuse me. Oh, goodness, I need some coffee. This whole agriculture thing is really ancient. You know, this goes back to at least 6,000 to 10,000 years. And it's interesting learning about the advent of agriculture in the ancient Near Middle East, because it was because of agriculture that we were able to have the first city-states. And agriculture is really the foundation of human civilization. Now that's anthropology, but it's true. I mean, having cities was only made possible through agriculture and through being able to grow, crops sufficient to feed a large population. Now, the crops weren't necessarily that good. I mean, from what I understand, when people went from a hunter-gatherer lifestyle to a sedentary agrarian lifestyle, their diets went to hell because all they ate was grain, which was really bad for their teeth, and it was actually poor nutrition. And they didn't get enough meat, and they didn't get enough fruits and vegetables, But it did but still, it was enough to live on, and so it really transformed society, and that's how we got some of our first city-states. So that's all really interesting. Anyways, so Joseph's dreaming about being a farmer, and he's working on the fields with his brothers. Oh my goodness. All right. They were binding sheaves in the field when suddenly my sheaf stood up and remained upright, and then your sheaves gathered round and bowed low to my sheaf. Huh. Okay. Well, I guess that's what they did. I don't know. Anyways, did I already do this Parsha? Seems like I did, but maybe I didn't. His brothers answered, "Do you mean to reign over us? Do you mean to rule over us?" And they hated him even more for his talk about dreams. He dreamed another dream and told his brothers, saying, "Look, I have had another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." And when he told this to his fathers and brothers, they berated him. "What?" he said. "Is this dream you have dreamed? Are we to come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow down to you?" So his brothers were brought up at him, and his father kept the matter in his mind. So this is dramatic foreshadowing. And that's why this is like these are literary devices, and they're really good literary devices that haven't been used much at this time in history. Hang on just a minute, I'm going to get a little coffee. I'll be right back. Hello, I'm back. Oh, and there's my cat. Hey, Cinnamon, say hi to everybody. Hang on just a minute. Here's my cat, Cinnamon. Say hi to everybody, Cinnamon. Hello. Anyways, that's Cinnamon. Okay, so back to the Torah. So, as an atheist, you might ask yourself, like, what's the point of this? How is this relevant to atheists? I mean, is there any relevance of this to atheists? Which, I wonder. And I think, like, for me, I already talked about what I think about the story. I mean, so this is a story about, like, they're doing dramatic foreshadowing because of course, later in the story, all the brothers will bow down to Joseph, and he will be greater than all of them because he's going to become basically second to the Pharaoh later in the story. So his entire role changes, his perspective changes. But here in this part of the Torah, he's just 17 years old and he doesn't know what's going to happen to him. But he's having these dreams, and in his dreams, he's already, he's already really ambitious. So those are his dreams. But he's, so in the dream, let's analyze this for a minute as atheists, okay, or just as literary people. So we're looking at the text. The text is doing dramatic foreshadowing, and it's telling you something about the future, but not the future in reality. It's telling you something about the future of the narrative, which again is just a story. None of this ever happened. It's just a story. But the narrative is telling you about the future. And that's so that's the thing. That's really the key. The key is really that this is a narrative and it doesn't really happen, but by you reading it and believing it, then it really happens. So, and that's actually the real insight into all religious text. There was a really good group I missed tonight, and it was a group that was discussing Yuval Harari's work. And I've talked about Yuval Harari before. And what Yuval Harari says is that, civilization is a collection of made up fantasies. Like, because everybody agrees to the same fiction, society is able to function, and even function remarkably well. And that even capitalism is this made up fiction that everybody agrees to and they're willing to do. And here, this dream is really telling you that very thing. It's really telling you that, it's because what the text is saying is it's doing the dramatic foreshadowing. It's telling you what's going to happen at the end of the text. And it's telling you to insert yourself into the text and to believe it as if it's real. And in the process of believing it as if it's real, then you not only step into the text with your own imagination, imagining that this is something that's really happening. Like, there's a space in your brain somewhere, there's a space in your brain where this is real. And that's the same place where God is real. So both of those spaces are the same because this is made up. But then it does more than that because you're looking at this as real. You're also comparing it to other things that actually are real in your life. Your relationships to other people, your relationships to your family, your own dreams, all of these complex parts of your identity by attaching to this text and making it part of you, then it implicates everything else in your brain that's connected to it. And that's what really good narrative does. Really good narrative is almost surgical in its ability to connect you, to move you, to transform you. But it's all aimed at you personally. So the text is really aimed at you. Now, as atheists, what do we do with this text? We're still implicated in the text in the same way that theists are. There isn't really that much difference between how an atheist will read the text and how a theist will read the text. The only difference is when a theist reads the text, they're looking for a deeper meaning. They want to find, but both So an atheist might read the text because they're looking for a deeper meaning, or they might read the text in order to, you know, satirize God, which is a perfectly legitimate activity. I highly condone it. So they might read the text in order to satirize God. Or, an atheist might also read the text because they're trying to find a deeper meaning too. Or maybe not a deeper meaning that's like leading you toward a God, but a deeper meaning that's helping you to understand and make sense of this tradition, so that you as an atheist can understand what they're trying to say. So it could do all of those things. Or, of course, as an atheist, you might just look at this and say, oh, this is a bunch of nonsense, which is also totally legitimate. It's there. It's all good. I encourage all of the above. And so now let's get to the dream. Okay, the dream. As an atheist, what do we do with dreams? As atheists, I mean, we have dreams, I think. Although I can't. So the last dream I remember was I live in this part of town where we have a lot of homeless people, and I shouldn't call them homeless people, houseless people. We have a lot of houseless people in my neighborhood, and they come up and down the streets. I mean, sometimes it's really challenging dealing with the houseless people, like especially in the summertime. There's been so many houseless people over the years walking up and down the streets, screaming, talking to themselves, carrying baseball bats, I don't know, carrying weapons, you know, pushing giant piles of garbage up and down the hill. And, I'm not, I don't have any problem with that. I mean, everybody's got to live, everybody's got to survive somehow. And the reason that a lot of these people are homeless is because the town that I live in is really expensive and everything's gotten so out of control expensive. Rent is insane. And a lot of it's greed. It's just greed. And we've decided that we don't care about poor people and, what kind of housing options poor people have. So somebody falls through the cracks. They end up wandering up and down the street, screaming at themselves. They're not getting any psychiatric care. They're doing drugs just to survive, because it's so terrible living on the streets. It can be so hard. And then every now and then they show up on my front porch and they fall asleep on my front porch. And, I want them to have shelter and to be safe. So, but at the same time, I also want them to, like, I don't know if they're going to set fire to my house sitting on my porch, if they're doing drugs and they've got lighters on them and they're trying to smoke something or whatever they're doing. It's like, I don't know what's going on. So I'm not totally comfortable with it, but at the same time, I'm not uncomfortable with it either. Anyways, the point of this story is that, I've had so many experiences with houseless people over the years that I have a little bit of anxiety about it, even though I'm trying to be a good liberal and being open-minded and accepting and trying to be supportive. But I also have some anxiety. I mean, I've let houseless people stay in my house before, sometimes for years, and it's been a mixed bag. But I have the house next to me is sometimes it's abandoned. Like, it's not really clear to me who owns the house. There's a lot of different random people who live in the house at different times. And sometimes the house is empty for months. And so I had this dream the other night, and in my dream, a bunch of homeless people had decided to occupy the house next door, and they were like throwing their stuff over the fence of my yard. Like, they were throwing their tarps over the fence, and they were throwing their clothes over the fence. And in my dream, I just remember, like, like in my dream it was very real. There were these homeless people and they had taken over the house next door, and it's like I shouldn't have thought, well, so what if there's homeless people living next door? What does that have to do with me? But then my anxiety in my dream was, oh, but then they're going to come over to my house. They're going to break into my house and try to take stuff. And it's like, there's going to be this constant stream of homeless people from the house next door, somehow interacting and engaging with my house. And that was my dream. So, that's like the kind of, and I'm an atheist, but I don't think that's an atheist dream. That's like, and who knows, maybe my dream wasn't even about that. Maybe my dream was about something else. Who knows? I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know what it was about, you know. I don't remember many of my dreams, but I know people dream. Here's Joseph dreaming. What do dreams mean to atheists? I mean, in the story, again, so I've already unpacked this. I mean, I've shown how, the point of the dream at the beginning is that it's a literary device meant to connect you to the end of the story. And so by connecting those two, it's supposed to both reinforce the idea that Joseph has some special connection with this divine, but you're supposed to, through your own hearing of the story or reading of the story, you're basically supposed to put yourself in the place of Joseph. And so by doing that, you're also putting your dream into this same machine. Believe me, this is a mechanistic process. I mean, this has direct tangible results on you as the viewer, the listener, because we can't help it. We're hardwired for storytelling. I really believe that. Anyways, let's keep on going. Go a little further. So his brothers were brought up at him, and his father kept the matter in his mind. One time, when his brothers had gone to pasture their father's flock at Shechem, Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers are pasturing at Shechem. Come, I will send you to them." Joseph answered, "I am ready." And Joseph said to him, "Go and see how your brothers are and how the flocks are faring, and bring me back word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron. When he reached Shechem, a man came upon him, wandering in the fields. The man asked him, "What are you looking for?" He answered, "I am looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are pasturing?" So I don't know. Who's the man? I want to know who the man is. I really do. Anyways, the man said, "They have gone far from here. They have gone from here. For I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before he came close, they conspired to kill him. Oh boy. Here's that sibling rivalry again. Ugh. Sibling rivalry. It's the worst thing. They said to one another, "Here comes that dreamer." Oh boy, he's a dreamer too. Yep. He's got a special coat. He's got his amazing Technicolor dream coat. And he's got his dreams. And his brothers are about to kill him. This is dramatic high drama. This is like a soap opera. "Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we can say, 'A savage beast devoured him. We shall see what comes of his dreams.'" So now they're taunting him. They're just, oh my gosh, they're just digging a big hole for themselves, metaphorically, a big hole. It's like, I mean, Joseph is just walking into this. He has no idea what's coming. But when Reuben heard it, he tried to save him from them. He said, "Let us not take his life." Reuben said, "Shed no blood. Cast him into the pit out in the wilderness, but do not touch him yourselves," intending to save him from them and restore him to his father. So it's like the oldest supposedly had an idea to do something different. Now, there's a nice story here that actually I think atheists can relate to. This is what, okay, so there's a lot of places in the Torah where it's not about God, it's about people, because the whole Torah is really just about people, anyways. It's not really about God because there is no God. And so it can't be about, I mean, on a meta level, it really can't be about God because there's no God. And so it's always about people. So here, there's a nice little narrative in here. The narrative is that when there's a group of people, seems to be human nature. So there's a gang. In this case, it's a bunch of brothers. And it seems to be very easy for them to do something terrible, to just do something terrible, like to elect Trump. All they have to do is all of them get together and gang up and say stupid shit. And all of a sudden, Trump is the president of the United States. And it's like, it's so easy for them to do it. It's like here they are saying, oh, let's kill our brother. And they're all just, this is the mentality of the mob. This is a mob mentality. And it's easy to whip people up into a mob mentality where like there's a whole bunch of people and they've decided that there's going to be a scapegoat. And the reason that they're doing this, the brothers are being this way, is because the brothers are traumatized. The brothers grew up in this dysfunctional family with like four mothers and all of this competition for Jacob's attention, so there's like all of the, I mean, people are not getting any emotional nurturing in this family whatsoever. And because of that, that it's inevitable. They're showing their true nature. They just can't help it. They can't help but be bastards, just be these rotten bastards who want to gang up on their youngest sibling and either kill him or throw him into a pit. And they're not thinking about how it is going to make their father feel or how it's going to make their mothers feel or what it's going to do to them inside. And this is actually really good stuff because it's a chance for you to think about. I mean, this story happens over and over again in human history. It happens every day. I guarantee you, this happens a million times a day on Earth to like a million different people. A billion. This happens all the time. This is like people gang up and they pick a victim and they traumatize the victim in order to address something that really they need to address themselves. And it's like, so if you ever feel like doing something really bad, if you ever feel this compulsion to do something that is really against your best interests, then you should listen to your conscience, because a lot of grief and aggravation can happen if you listen to your conscience. And that's kind of what the brothers here aren't doing. I mean, the brothers here, they don't seem to have any conscience. They don't seem to have any morality guiding them. Now, this unfortunately is something that we always get accused of as atheists. We're always being accused of like, oh, we don't have a conscience. We don't have a morality. We don't have a higher purpose. And if we did, well, then explain how. Explain how to do it without God. I mean, how many times have you heard that if you're an atheist? And if you're a theist and you're watching this, well, then think about that. How many times have you thought, oh, an atheist couldn't possibly be moral, couldn't possibly make any kind of moral decisions because they don't have God. This is, for us as atheists, this is one of the things that we hate about religious people. We really do. And it's like, if you try to explain the foundations of a moral philosophy, well, you can't really explain it with religion. I mean, if you try to explain the foundations of moral philosophy with religion, then I guarantee you every single week I'm going to show you how this God is not moral, because he's not. He's not a moral God. And so, I would basically say that we're not getting our morality from the Bible. If there's anything that's making us good as human beings, it's not something that we're mainly getting from the Bible or from the Torah. You know, and that's because I think it's probably something that we're getting from ourselves. That's kind of my conclusion. My conclusion is that there's something like we're fundamentally a moral species. We're really concerned with justice. We're concerned with what's right. We're concerned with what's fair. And I would guess that most of our morality comes from our evolutionary heritage. And our evolutionary heritage was shaped by what? By living in small communities for hundreds of thousands of years and having to survive in these small communities of up to maybe like 150 people. And I think that the small group community living that we did as a species, which ensured our survival, is also where we got our morality from. I think that our quote unquote morality, our quote unquote ethics, is probably hard baked into us on an evolutionary level. And I think that's probably where our morality comes from. I've often heard ridiculous things like, oh, well, atheists don't have any morals. So an atheist wouldn't have any problems just murdering someone the way that, like, say, for instance, the president murders people sometimes, occasionally, because they think that's a good idea. Or other world leaders do, or people casually go to war. Well, I just lost the train of that thought. But that's okay, because I'm almost out of time. So we're getting to the end of Atheist Torah study. In the rest of this Parsha, Joseph ends up getting thrown into a pit, and then he gets sold into slavery, and he ends up in Egypt, and he still has dreams while he's in prison in Egypt, and his dreams help him to both get out of jail and also socially advance. And so we will get into more of that part of the story on the next episode of Atheist Torah Study. This has been Parsha Vayeshev, which I think I might have done once before, but that's okay. It's all right if there's two versions of it. So anyways, this has been Parsha Vayeshev. And next week, what do we have next week? We have the next episode of Atheist Torah Study is Parsha Miketz. So Miketz will be next, and then Vayigash, and then Vayiki. So, and that'll be the end of Genesis. So anyways, thanks so much for watching this episode of Atheist Torah Study. My name is Emma. You can reach me at Atheist Torah Study at gmail.com. And if you're on social media, you can find me at Atheist Torah Study on TikTok and on YouTube. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.